My name is Jack. I'm 35 years old. Currently, I sometimes work for a moving company run by my high school friend, Tom. Tom reached out to me when he found out I wasn't working, and that's how it started. Jack, you're not doing anything right now, are you? If you don't mind, could you help us out? We're short on hands and really struggling. Really? I don't know how much help I'll be, but if I'm in, I'll give it my all. Even though I'm working at a moving company, it's not like there's work every day. I get called in to help with moves on weekends or during busy periods. And I get paid for the day's work in cash. Helping out at the moving company is a fresh experience for me, and I enjoy the physical activity. When I haven't worked for a while, Tom gives me a call. Can you help out this coming Saturday? Yeah, sure. Where's the location? He told me it was a high-end apartment for singles. My job would be to receive the delivered furniture and carry it into the apartment. On the day of the move, I was standing in front of the apartment building wearing the company uniform. Someone passing by spoke to me. Hey, aren't you Buddy? Oh, your real name is different. Aren't you Jack? Ha! Oh, you must be. Standing there was a classmate from middle school, Mark. Unpleasant memories rushed through my mind. I attended a public middle school in my hometown. We went to different elementary schools but ended up together in middle school, and he had his eye on me from the start. I heard you're good at school, huh? But I doubt you can beat me. I was taken aback by such a statement right after we met. According to classmates from his elementary school, he came from a prestigious family and had excellent grades. Does he see me as a rival? What a hassle. I decided to avoid him as much as possible. However, right after we started school, I got the top score on a test, and he approached me again. Hey, did you cheat? There's no way I would be second place otherwise. I didn't cheat. You definitely cheated. From now on, I'm calling you Buddy. That's when Mark and his cronies started their childish harassment. It was typical stuff. My things would be hidden, and they'd make loud, sarcastic comments about me in front of everyone. Still, I endured it. I thought if I remained composed, it would be fine. But Mark was the boss of the class. He was loud and had many followers. No one wanted to get involved with me, whom he had targeted. Before I knew it, I had become an isolated figure in the class. That alone, I could tolerate. In the second semester of our first year, Mark approached me, grinning. Hey Jack, you don't have a dad, right? You live with just your mom? I froze. It was true. My parents divorced when I was young. Since then, I'd been raised by my mom. She is kind and hardworking. She cared about me more than anything. She worked multiple jobs to raise me as best as she could. Yeah, and so what? I managed to reply, and he burst out laughing. Seriously? So you really are from a single-parent family. No wonder you're wearing that old uniform. It's probably a hand-me-down, isn't it? How pathetic. I felt my face heat up. It was true that my uniform was a hand-me-down from my older cousin. As I stayed silent, he continued. Your mom works as a janitor at my dad's company, right? Tough job, huh? She was indeed working as a building cleaner around that time. I bit my lip. With both parents and a rich family like mine, I can't imagine that. Must be tough, huh? He and his cronies looked at me with smirks. Classmates shot sympathetic glances my way, which only made me feel more embarrassed. That's none of your business, I replied. Oh, but I do sympathize. Keep up the good work, Buddy, he mocked. They laughed, but all I could do was silently endure it. He continued to call me Buddy and kept bringing up my single-parent household to belittle me. He criticized my belongings and boasted about his latest gadgets. I wanted to stop competing with him. It was unbearable to hear him insult my mother, the most important person in my life. I stopped raising my hand in class and intentionally made mistakes on tests to rank around 5th. When that happened, he said, "That's more like it. Don't cheat anymore, Buddy. He kept taking first place after that. I became isolated in middle school and closed off emotionally. Around the time of high school entrance exams, Mark asked, Buddy, where are you going for high school? I'm aiming for Central High. I was aiming for the top public high school in the state. Hearing this, he sneered. You're only ranked 5th. There's no way you can get into Central High. You never know until you try. I'm going to X Academy, a private school out of state. Your family can't afford that, can they? Yeah, probably not. Satisfied with my response, he left. Given my family's situation, I couldn't afford private school as a backup. I had to aim solely for Central High. I studied hard on my own, without attending supplemental classes, and got good results on the practice tests. All that was left was the actual exam. However, on the day of the exam, I caught the flu. I couldn't even go to the test site and could only cry in frustration in bed. On graduation day, Mark said to me, "So you're not going to high school after all? Going to work with just a middle school education?" "Yeah, that's the plan." Ha! How pathetic. Good luck, buddy. That was my last memory of Mark. Middle school memories rushed through my mind, making me freeze up. In front of me, Mark, now an adult, still wore that same disdainful smile. "What's the matter? Why are you frozen like that?" His voice snapped me back to reality, and I managed to respond to him. "Oh, sorry. I was just surprised. Buddy." "No, since we're adults now, I should call you Jack." "What are you doing here in that uniform? Are you working for a moving company?" "Yeah, that's right. It's my job." He laughed and said, "Oh, I see. You found work at a moving company. By the way, today's move is mine. I'll be counting on you." "Got it. I'll do my best." Then he asked me, "So, are you working full-time?" I mumbled my reply. "No. I only help out when there's work." "What the heck, that means you're practically unemployed." I didn't deny it. It was true that I didn't have a regular job. "I'm working in sales at D-Advertising. You've heard of it, right?" He mentioned the largest advertising agency in the area. I knew it was a well-paying, highly coveted company. "That's impressive. That's why I can live in a high-end apartment like this in my early 30s. Where do you live now?" I told him the truth. "With my mom." Mark snorted. "Living with your mom at this age without a steady job? That's pathetic." "Well, you were raised by a single mom. Can't leave your beloved mom, huh?" I just laughed awkwardly. Then he pulled out his phone. "Jack, give me your number." "What? Why?" "I'll take you out for a drink sometime. Also, I'll spread the word about your moving company to my friends in the area." "Come on. Give me your number." I hesitated for a moment, but then thought it might help Tom's moving company. So, I exchanged contact information with Mark. Just then, the truck carrying his furniture arrived. As I started unloading the truck, he gave me a bunch of annoying instructions. He was smirking, and he only did this to me, not to the other staff, likely trying to mess with me. But I took it as a customer's request and went about my work calmly. When the job was done, and I was about to leave, Mark called me. "Hey Jack, here's a tip. You'd better appreciate it." I took it. "Thanks. We'll use it to buy drinks for everyone. You know, you can use it for your living expenses too. Your life must be tough." Smiling wryly at his final jab, I left. Back at the company, Tom asked, "Jack, what's up? You look exhausted. Did something happen?" "No, it's nothing." Then he said, "We're entering the quiet season, so we probably won't need your help for a while. Thanks for all your hard work." I smiled and took the day's pay he handed me. "Thanks, it's been a good experience. Let's grab a meal sometime." I parted ways with him. About a week later, Mark called me to meet at a bar. "Hey, it really is Buddy." The person who spoke to me was David, one of Mark's cronies from middle school. "David, long time no see." "See, David? I told you I ran into him during the move," Mark said, and David grinned. "Wow, a moving company, huh? You've been working since you dropped out after middle school. Are you planning to keep doing this?" "No, the moving job was the last one before the quiet season," I replied. Mark looked at me with pity. So, you really are unemployed. I've never met a classmate who's unemployed before. I decided to go along with it to avoid more hassle. Yeah, I guess that's true. David then proudly said. I work at the biggest bank around here. I'm at the bank, Mark's at the ad agency. Since your classmates are doing well, you should step up too. Yeah, sure. He continued. You probably don't have any money since you're unemployed, so tonight's on me. Be grateful. I hurried to respond. No. I'll pay my share. But Mark, smirking, interjected. Don't worry about it. Just take advantage of our generosity. All right. During the drinking session, all I heard were their bragging stories. By the time it was over, I was exhausted from the effort of keeping up appearances. About a month later, I got a call from Mark. Hey Jack, are you free this Saturday? I don't have any plans, but why? Well, since you're unemployed, you must have time. I'm inviting you to a mixer on Saturday. The women are gorgeous nurses. You're welcome. I felt a bit troubled. I'd rather not. What? We need you to make up the numbers. I'm counting you in, so you better show up. He hung up after giving me the details of the place. I had never actually participated in a mixer before. But I found myself becoming a bit interested. In the end, I decided to join the mixer. On the day of the mixer, I chose my most presentable clothes and left the house. As I stepped outside, the weather was quite warm, and the cherry blossoms were about to bloom. I arrived at the designated place at 6 p.m. The meeting time was 7 p.m., but the place serves coffee as a cafe during the day, so I decided to have a coffee while waiting. I was greeted by a young waitress. Her name tag read Emily. Welcome. Do you have a reservation? There's a reservation under Mark for 7 p.m. I came early to have a coffee first. Is that okay? Of course. Let me show you to your seat. She led me to a counter seat and mentioned to a woman sitting at the counter. I believe you also have a reservation for 7 p.m., right? We only have one reservation today, so you might be here for the same event. The woman at the counter looked up. She was astonishingly beautiful. Large eyes, fair skin, and a perfectly balanced, delicate face. I was momentarily captivated. Are you here for the mixer tonight? I'm Sarah, she said. Yes, I'm Jack. I came early to have some coffee. She smiled at me. So did I. The coffee here has great reviews online, and I wanted to enjoy it slowly. We might have a lot in common. I sat down next to her. She was indeed beautiful. Mark wasn't exaggerating when he mentioned the beautiful nurse. I hadn't talked to a woman in a long time, and I felt nervous. Just then, Michael, who was behind the counter, approached us. Would you both like coffee? I recommend the Blue Mountain today. I ordered it, and she nodded. Jack, you're quite tall. She remarked. Yeah, I'm 6 feet 1 inch. I sometimes bump my head. I replied, making her laugh. We chatted. It was mostly light small talk. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the quiet cafe. Dad, what happened? Emily called out. Michael had dropped and broken a coffee cup. Shards were scattered on the floor. My arm just wouldn't move properly, he said. Emily, looking exasperated, went to fetch a broom. It seemed they were father and daughter. Are you all right? I asked. He apologized, I'm sorry for the trouble. As time passed, the other participants started to arrive. It turned out to be a 3-on-3 mixer. The other two women were Sarah's colleagues, Lisa and Jennifer. Nice to meet you. Looking forward to tonight. I've been excited about this evening. They were both attractive, though not as striking as Sarah. On the men's side, it was me, Mark, and David. Oh, Jack, you're already here. Early bird, David remarked. I wanted some coffee. Is Mark not here yet? Just then, Mark made his grand entrance. Sorry, I'm late. Let's have fun tonight. We all took our seats, and the mixer began. When it was Sarah's turn to introduce herself, Mark and David were captivated. Given her beauty, it was understandable, but I made sure to also pay attention to the other two women. I'm Mark. I work in sales at D Advertising, a top firm. He said confidently. The other two women's eyes sparkled with interest. Working for a big advertising agency was clearly a draw. Next, David introduced himself. I'm David. I work at a bank. I'm seriously looking for a marriage partner tonight, he announced. He also received expectant looks from the two women. Sarah, however, remained composed. Then it was my turn. I'm Jack. Suddenly, Mark interrupted loudly. Unemployed, he announced loudly. The women looked momentarily shocked. This guy, he's jobless at his age. Go ahead and laugh, David said, causing Lisa and Jennifer to laugh awkwardly. Is that true? Is there a reason for it? Well, actually. I began to explain, but David cut me off. He was working at a moving company until recently, but that job's gone now. He's completely unemployed. Tough luck, right? Lisa and Jennifer exchanged troubled glances. It was clear they had lost interest in me. Excuse me. Can we order? Mark called to Michael, who then looked at Emily. But he could only stammer, unable to continue. Emily noticed and laughed. Dad, did you forget your daughter's name? She came over to take the order. I was a bit concerned about Michael. As I watched him, Sarah spoke to me. Jack, do you have any hobbies? Just then, Mark interrupted. Sarah, ask me instead. I'm into golf. My last score was. He started bragging. When he finished, David began talking about his sauna hobby. The women listened politely. When they were done, Sarah turned back to me. I enjoy reading, I said. Me too. What have you read recently? She asked. As I started to answer, Mark interrupted again. Sarah, you're too kind. Don't bother with him, he's unemployed. Locking eyes with David, he burst out laughing. The women frowned, but the guys didn't notice. I silently drank my drink. Now, let's hear about you ladies. Which hospital do you work at? Mark asked at that moment. Emily shouted. Dad, what's wrong? I turned to see Michael stumbling with vacant eyes before collapsing to the floor. Emily screamed, and the other customers began to panic. Hey, what's happening to this guy? He just collapsed. Someone should call an ambulance. The three nurses started to rise, but then Michael began snoring loudly. Dad, are you sleeping? Don't scare me like that, Emily said. The customers murmured. He's just sleeping? What a scare. Mark tried to refocus. Guess the old guy's just tired. He'll wake up soon. Let's get back to the mixer. But I rushed to Michael. As Emily tried to wake him, I shouted. Don't move him. My loud voice drew the attention of the entire cafe. I spoke to Michael, who was lying on his back, but he didn't respond, only snoring loudly. I'm sorry for the disturbance. I think he's just sleeping, so please, everyone. I observed him closely. I checked his pulse, looked into his eyes, and examined him for any injuries. Sarah, call an ambulance immediately, I said sharply. She snapped out of her daze and responded, yes. While she was calling for the ambulance, I acted quickly. I loosened his tie and belt and covered him with a jacket. He remained unresponsive. An ambulance? Emily asked, clearly distressed. Stay calm, I said. Your father might be having a stroke. A stroke? Emily gasped. When he dropped the cup earlier, he mentioned that his arm wouldn't move, I continued. Yes, that's right. That's never happened before, Emily replied. I explained calmly. He also couldn't remember your name just now. And his face looks droopy on one side. You're right, but what does that mean? Emily asked. These symptoms are early signs of a stroke. From his snoring and the movement of his eyes, I'm certain. You should never move a stroke patient. Avoid shaking him. Oh no. Dad! Emily cried. Just then, the ambulance arrived. I quickly explained his symptoms and my observations. It's definitely a stroke. Please transport him carefully without jostling, I instructed. The paramedics seemed to agree with my assessment. Understood, they said, and gently moved him into the ambulance. The remaining staff will handle the cafe. We're sorry for any inconvenience, Emily bravely announced to the customers. She then approached me, her eyes filled with tears. Thank you so much. I wouldn't have known what to do and might have made things worse, she said. No problem. Just stay with your father, I replied. She nodded and got into the ambulance. Once the ambulance left, the cafe started to calm down, and the other customers returned to their seats. I excused myself from the table and went to wash my hands. When I returned, everyone was staring at me in shock. Sarah broke the silence. Who are you? She asked. I decided it was time to reveal the truth. I'm a neurosurgeon, I said. Mark shouted. What? What are you talking about? David, his voice trembling, added. Yeah, you said you were unemployed. I began to explain. It's true, I'm a neurosurgeon. I was working at a university hospital in New York until recently. I've been called to a local hospital here and will start next month. I've had a 6-month gap, so technically, I'm unemployed right now, I said. Mark scoffed. Don't lie. Claiming to be a doctor, that's pathetic, he said. Just then, Sarah seemed to realize something. Wait, are you going to work at Y Hospital? She asked. Y Hospital is one of the largest and most central hospitals in the area. It's known for having excellent doctors and is highly trusted by patients. Everyone in the community knows about this major hospital. Yes, but how did you know that? I asked. The two women gasped. That's where we work, they exclaimed. To think you're going to be one of our doctors. Sarah spoke with a serious expression. I heard a famous young neurosurgeon from New York was coming. I never imagined it was you, Jack. But your handling of the situation was perfect. There's no doubt you're a doctor. The two women looked at me in amazement. Mark and David were visibly shaken. That's a lie. You were working at a moving company. Mark protested. The moving company belongs to a high school friend, I explained. He asked me to help out while I was between jobs. It helped him and kept me active. David furrowed his brow. A high school friend? But you dropped out after middle school, he said. I recalled my past. I had indeed failed my high school entrance exams and initially chose to work. However, my mother insisted that she would cover the tuition if I tried again. I studied intensely while working part-time. A year later, I was admitted to S High School in New York on a full scholarship. S High School is a prestigious institution known for its rigorous academic standards. It is highly competitive, often ranked among the top schools nationally. Sarah remarked, even though she wasn't from the area. I was surprised by her knowledge but continued my story. I'm proud that S High School gave opportunities to students like me who weren't financially privileged, I continued. At S High School, I quickly befriended Tom, a fellow student from my hometown. We worked hard in our studies, but we also had fun and laughed together. Those days were much happier compared to my middle school years. Eventually, the time came to think about college. I was planning to attend a national university, but my homeroom teacher, Mr. Anderson, suggested something different. Jack, you have top grades. Staying here would be limiting. How about aiming for an overseas university, he suggested. I don't think I can afford it. I responded. I'll find a scholarship that covers everything. I believe you can become an outstanding doctor, he encouraged. He indeed found a scholarship and supported me through the application process. My best friend Tom and Mr. Anderson, my teacher. These two people I met in high school are my benefactors. Mark swallowed hard. So, which university did you go to? He asked. I went to Oxford University, I replied. The two women reacted with excitement. Oxford? That's a top-tier university. I know about it too. Only the world's top elites go there. Mark and David were left speechless, their mouths agape. So, you studied medicine at Oxford University? Sarah asked. Yes, I worked hard to become a neurosurgeon. I spent some time there, then got called back to work at a prestigious university in New York. Recently, Y Hospital offered me a position, and I decided to return to my hometown. That's how I ended up meeting them again, I explained. Lisa and Jennifer were thrilled. Wow! It's rare to meet a doctor from Oxford University. Lisa exclaimed. That jacket, it's high-end, isn't it? I thought there was no way an unemployed person could wear something like that. And you look great, Jennifer added. Their sudden interest made me smile wryly. Mark and David were completely sidelined. Hey, you two were praising me earlier, Mark protested. Compared to a neurosurgeon from Oxford, working at an ad agency or bank seems insignificant. And the salary difference must be huge, right? Lisa pointed out. When Lisa said that, Jennifer continued. Exactly. Besides, you've been looking down on Jack all evening. No matter the profession, that kind of attitude isn't attractive, Jennifer added. Mark and David turned pale. Sarah then spoke up. Jack, could we exchange contact information? She asked. Of course, I replied enthusiastically. Lisa and Jennifer also joined in. That's not fair. I wanted to, Lisa said. Me too, Jennifer added. So, I ended up exchanging contact information with them. For the rest of the mixer, Mark and David were much quieter. As we were about to leave, Sarah said, Jack, your response today was truly impressive. I'm proud to work with you at the same hospital. Feeling nervous, I replied. Sarah, would you like to have dinner with me sometime? Her eyes widened, and then she gave me the brightest smile of the evening. I'd love to. I'll find a great place. Look forward to it, she said. Lisa and Jennifer chimed in. Oh, Sarah got him. But you two really suit each other, Lisa said. Yeah, we're rooting for you, Jennifer added. Mark and David watched us with envy but quickly left. I walked home that night with a light heart. The cherry blossoms along the streets were beginning to bloom. Here's what happened after that. Rumors that I was a doctor who graduated from Oxford University spread throughout the town. Mark, on the other hand, had been telling our classmates that I was unemployed, so he ended up being called a liar. Mark and David continued attending Mixer, but their personalities seemed to get in the way, preventing them from dating any women. Mark was also acting arrogant at work, resulting in a terrible reputation. Realizing that an office romance was unlikely, he signed up for a dating service. He found a promising woman there, but she ended up taking his money and disappearing. It was classic marriage fraud. With his savings gone, he was disowned by his wealthy parents, who called him a disgrace. He now lives in a cheap apartment, and rumors about him circulate at work daily. Mark and David had a falling out over financial issues, and David is now actively searching for a partner. If they hope to achieve a happy future, they must first change their personalities. However, I doubt they'll realize that. Afterward, I received a call from Emily, who had tracked me down. Thanks to you, my father is recovering and is now undergoing rehab. The hospital said the initial treatment was excellent. I can't imagine what would have happened without you. We're very grateful. Please come by again. I was happy to receive such words, and that place has now become my regular spot. I'm looking forward to his return after rehab. So, about Sarah and me. I discovered something surprising after that. Actually, my parents are divorced too. I was raised by my mother here, while my father works in New York. I see. We're in the same situation. Then she said. I get along well with my father and see him often. I've heard about you. He said one of his students was a hard worker who got into Oxford University. He seemed very proud. I was stunned. Could it be that your father is? He teaches at S High School in New York under the name Anderson. Yes, her father was my mentor, Mr. Anderson. We were amazed by this coincidence and deeply moved. This led us to grow even closer, and we officially started dating. I began working at Y Hospital, and I often spoke with Lisa and Jennifer. Jack, how are things with Sarah? Sarah was the office beauty. Many people must be envious of you. But no one can compete with you, Jack. I scratched my head and said, "Come on, don't tease me." Sarah, Lisa, and Jennifer still seem to get along well. On our 1-year anniversary, I proposed to Sarah. "Thank you, I'm so happy. We need to tell my father." And so we went to see Mr. Anderson. I never imagined Sarah's partner would be you. But I trust you with my daughter, Jack. Take good care of her. Reuniting with him, I expressed my gratitude from those days. I was delighted that he would become my father-in-law. We got married soon after. Sarah also gets along well with my mother. She told me about your favorite dishes. I made them, so please try, she said as she set the food in front of me. Yeah, it's delicious, Sarah. Thank you. She smiled happily. We now live in a big house in our hometown, enjoying a happy life together. In fact, in 6 months, we will welcome a new addition to our family. We are eagerly awaiting this joy together. I hope to continue working hard and living happily, supporting and cherishing my family. I have never had romantic feelings for Jessica, who grew up like a sibling to me. But looking at her now, she is quite an attractive woman. Her face is reasonably cute, and she's just endlessly cheerful. I'm sure she's popular, but working at a small factory, she probably doesn't have many opportunities to meet people. Even at 30, there's no sign of a boyfriend. Jessica stares intently at me. What? What is it? Feeling a bit conscious of Jessica as a woman, I sipped my wine and turned away from her. After this, my heart started racing. My name is Ryan. I'm 30 years old. I left my hometown to attend NYU and ended up staying in New York, working at a small company that sells and repairs electronics. Most of my colleagues are my dad's age, and there aren't many young people around. So I'm pretty much the favorite. Hey, Ryan, doing some office work today? Here, take this. Michael, who is turning 60 this year, said this and placed a small pastry on my desk. Thanks, I said, as Michael smiled and took a seat at the end of the office to start his work. He was compiling the daily report. At our company, we write up a report at the end of each day. We handwrite all the details about the types and models of appliances we delivered, and for repairs, we added the issues and how we fixed them. Honestly, I'm not good at it. My handwriting is messy, my hand gets tired, and it takes a lot of time. I wish I could just type it up on a computer, but in this workplace filled with older folks, it's not that simple. We repair appliances and sell computers, but many of my colleagues aren't comfortable using them. However, the content we write in the reports is pretty repetitive, and there aren't that many different manufacturers. If everything was just selectable from a list, it would be a lot easier. I think even my dad's generation could get used to it and find it simple to use. Every time I write a report, I think about how to make it easier. Writing these reports, it's tough, isn't it? When I said this to Michael, who was working quietly, he looked up a bit. Is that so? I'm used to it by now. Michael didn't seem to find it particularly burdensome. My handwriting is bad, and I'm not good at it. Honestly, when I have to write the same manufacturer's name over and over, it gets annoying. It would be much easier if we could just select it on a computer. Michael frowned a bit at this. I'm not good with computers. Feeling a bit disappointed by Michael's response, I heard another voice from behind me. Is there such a system now? When I looked back, our president, Mr. Smith, was standing there with a smile. At 63, Mr. Smith is still actively working. You know, it can be done. Even with Excel. Excel, a spreadsheet program, is a handy tool that can calculate totals and averages with formulas. If the office staff are going to enter the numbers into Excel at the end of the month, it would be easier to input them into Excel from the start. Mr. Smith dislikes formalities, so my language has become more casual over time. Then, make that system for us. I was taken aback by Mr. Smith's words. Me? I pointed at myself, eyes wide. Mr. Smith smiled. Who else but you? I can't do it, and neither can Michael, right? Michael nodded in agreement. I wouldn't know how to use such a system even if it was made. I chuckled. Even if I make it, if no one uses it, it would be a waste. Mr. Smith shook his head. We need to think about efficiency, otherwise, we won't attract younger people. If you can make that system, please do. I started to sweat. Even though I had suggested it, I had no idea how to create such a system. I dabbled a bit in college classes, but that's about it. I have used it before, though. I had used Excel for a part-time job in college, inputting customer information. You could select male or female, and entering a zip code would automatically display the town name. Can I really make something like that? I was unsure, but Mr. Smith, still smiling, said, "I'm counting on you. Do it as soon as possible," and left the office. It seemed that Mr. Smith had already decided I was the one to make it. I scratched my head, thinking, if I search online, I should be able to find instructions, right? That night, I searched online. Sure enough, there were many guides available. I picked one and started reading. I can't understand it just by reading. As I pondered, my phone rang. It was Jessica, my childhood friend who lived next door to my parents. "Hey, long time no talk. How've you been?" Jessica's cheerful voice greeted me. "I'm good. How about you?" "I ran into your mom today, so I thought I'd call." Jessica often checked in on me on behalf of my parents. Hearing her bright, familiar voice cheered me up. "Tell her I'm doing well. I just got a new task at work, it looks tough from what I've researched." I briefly told Jessica about the new system. Jessica said, "I'm not good with computers either. It would be great if you could come back and help out at our company, Ryan." In a half-crying voice, so I laughed. "How's it going being the company president? Are you managing well?" Jessica is now the president of a small factory. After her father passed away early, she took over the factory started by her grandfather. Upon graduating college, Jessica joined the factory and learned the ropes from her grandfather as the next president. When her grandfather passed away a year ago, Jessica became the president. "I'm managing fine because everyone is kind, but there are still many issues, especially with computers." Since there was no shadow in Jessica's voice, I felt relieved for the time being. "Don't push yourself too hard." After that, we had a casual conversation and then hung up. "All right, let's do this." Energized by my childhood friend's voice, I dove back into reading about how to create the system. It was hard to understand just by reading, but once I tried it, it actually went pretty smoothly. This is fun. I found unexpected joy in creating a tool I had used before, and I got immersed in making a list of the manufacturers we deal with at work. Before I knew it, it was late at night. I hurried to bed, but I was too excited to sleep. I ended up making lists of ideas that came to me, resulting in almost an all-nighter. This pattern continued for several days. I worked on the system during spare moments at work, but time was limited, so the progress was slow. To make future work easier, I mostly worked on the system at home. After many nights of staying up late, I finally completed the new system. When I explained the finished system to Mr. Smith, he was astonished. "This will make things much easier." "Thank you. Submit your hours, and I'll make sure you get paid for this work." I was flustered. But I started enjoying it midway through, so it felt more like a hobby. Mr. Smith smiled. "I saw how seriously you were working on it. We will pay you for something the company will use." I felt a bit embarrassed. If I hadn't rushed, I could have completed it bit by bit during work hours. Because of my intense focus, I ended up working on it at home. However, Mr. Smith smiled and said, "This might help us move towards going paperless." I'd love to stop printing so much paper. I made up my mind that next time I would try to solve the problem within working hours. The new system was generally well received. Except for one person, Michael. Michael, who had always been kind to me, reacted unfavorably. I tried to explain it cheerfully to him, but he said, "Using a computer at this point feels burdensome." His face lacked its usual vigor, and he seemed like a different person. "You can do it, Michael. I'll help you get used to it. You'll get the hang of it in no time." I said this with an exaggerated smile, but Michael sighed. I was fine with writing by hand. A month have passed after introducing the new system. Everyone else had gotten used to the system and was running smoothly. As everyone got used to it, it seemed to save time. My colleagues started saying, "I can't believe how much easier this makes our work," and began to express their gratitude. But Michael still hadn't adjusted. He would bring me his handwritten reports and say, "Enter this for me," before walking away. "Let's do it together. You'll get used to it if you do it yourself." If Michael didn't get used to it, my workload would keep increasing. Then, Michael glared at me slightly and said, "Since you made it, you should take responsibility." I never wanted to use a computer in the first place, and with that blunt reply, he left the office. It saddened me that Michael hadn't adapted, but even more so that we couldn't enjoy our usual chats. On my way home, I saw Michael and some colleagues talking in the break room. I was about to greet them when I overheard Michael. "That system makes me feel like they're telling me I'm not needed." Hearing that, I quickly left the area. My actions had caused Michael distress. Creating this system had made Michael resent me. This realization slowly ate away at me. And then, "Are you sure you want to do this?" A month later, I handed in my resignation. "I'm sorry. I've been thinking about it for a while. I'm an only child. And I thought it'd be better to return home at this point to think about looking after my parents." There was a bit of a lie in that. My parents had told me not to worry about looking after them and to live my life. But it had been weighing on my mind. Being an only son, I knew I would have to take care of my parents someday. I had been wondering if it was right to stay in New York forever. But I enjoyed my job, felt comfortable at my workplace, and loved living in New York where everything was just a short train ride away. However, I decided to leave that life behind and return to the countryside because my workplace no longer felt welcoming. In this office filled with older colleagues, everyone was kind and took good care of me. I felt like I was surrounded by family, which made the current situation even harder. I felt ashamed, but this made me seriously consider my parents, and I ultimately decided to return to the countryside. I asked Mr. Smith to keep my resignation a secret until the last minute, and he reluctantly agreed. On my last day, I gave a simple farewell speech and left the company. I couldn't bring myself to look at Michael. We had remained distant since then, and sometimes I found the previous day's handwritten report left on my computer in the morning. I wonder who will do this after I'm gone. That thought crossed my mind, but I tried not to dwell on it and focused on preparing for my move back home. As the plane took off and the cityscape of New York faded away, I suddenly felt like crying. I hope Michael enjoys his work. With that prayer, I said goodbye to New York. As soon as I got home, Jessica burst into my room. "Jessica, you should at least knock." When I looked exasperated, Jessica broke into a wide smile. "Wow. It feels like it's been ages." I felt a bit embarrassed by her bright smile. "We met during the holidays, remember?" Jessica wagged her fingers side to side. "Nope, it's different. Now that you're staying here for good, it feels different." Your mom was thrilled. I blushed a bit at that. "Well, thanks." I sat down on the bed. "So, what brings you here? Don't you have work?" When I said that, Jessica rummaged through the shopping bag she had brought. Then she took out a bottle of wine. "What are you talking about? It's Sunday. Let's drink." I chuckled. "Starting in the afternoon? Can't it wait until evening?" Jessica laughed as she poured the wine into paper cups. "Come on, it's fine." She knew I hadn't come back home entirely on my own terms. She was trying to cheer me up while I was feeling a bit down. I appreciated her effort. As I started feeling tipsy, I told Jessica everything. It still made me sad to talk about how Michael, my favorite person at work, had become distant. "Didn't you talk to Michael at all?" In response to Jessica's question, I nodded. I feel guilty. It's like I'm repaying Michael's kindness with something negative. I never thought he'd feel like he was no longer needed because of the new system. I was short-sighted. As I mumbled, Jessica patted my shoulder. "But the work got more efficient, right?" I nodded. For me, the system was great. We had some bugs, but I think we fixed all of them over the last 2 months. And not having to handwrite everything was the best. Jessica laughed. "Then it's okay. Michael will understand eventually." I hoped she was right. "Have you found a job here yet?" I made a grimace. "I told you. I'm not going to work at your factory, Jessica. I just can't picture you as the boss." Jessica pouted at my response. "Fine, then you be the boss." I chuckled at her playful suggestion. Hey, you inherited that company from your grandfather. Don't talk about it so lightly. Jessica still pouted. Well, at least help out until you find a job. I'll pay you. With her cheeks slightly flushed from the alcohol, Jessica looked at me seriously. I have never had romantic feelings for Jessica, who grew up like a sibling to me. But looking at her now, she is quite an attractive woman. She has a good figure, a reasonably cute face, and she's endlessly cheerful. I'm sure she's popular, but working at a small factory, she probably doesn't meet many people. Even at 30, there's no sign of a boyfriend. Jessica stared intently at me. What? What is it? Feeling a bit conscious of Jessica as a woman, I sipped my wine and turned away from her. Unfazed, Jessica continued. We have so many handwritten documents at the factory. Blueprints, inspection sheets, instructions. Can't we do something about that? I clapped my hands. That's what I was working on at my previous job. Jessica's face lit up. Really? She asked, and I nodded. It's called going paperless. You manage those documents on computers or tablets. You can search them instantly and there's no need to print. I was hoping to try it out once the other system was up and running. Jessica's eyes sparkled. Help me implement that, please. I hesitated, but the thought of leaving my previous job without using the gathered information had been bothering me. Well, I guess I could do that. Jessica hugged me tightly. Yay! Thank you so much. My heart started pounding. Hey! You're drunk. Stop that. As I tried to push her away, Jessica hugged me even tighter. In the heat of the moment, fueled by the wine. I'm doing something I've always wanted to do. Her ear was close to my heart. She could definitely hear my racing heartbeat. I felt incredibly embarrassed in front of my childhood friend. Whether she noticed my feelings or not, Jessica moved her ear away from my chest and looked up at me with a mischievous glint. Do you understand what I mean? I was confused. Huh? When I let out a surprised yelp, Jessica quickly stepped away from me and said, just kidding. Oh, Ryan, you were so nervous. You made me anxious too. She then began to swiftly clean up the empty wine bottle and snack wrappers. As I stood there trying to grasp the situation, Jessica grabbed the trash, stood up quickly, and said, all right, see you tomorrow. Before promptly leaving my room. I was left bewildered, staring at the door. I replayed the recent events in my mind. What had Jessica said when she hugged me? She mentioned doing something she'd always wanted to do. She asked if I understood what she meant. That means. Thinking about it further felt overwhelming. I pulled out an old photo album that caught my eye. Among the many family photos, Jessica appeared in almost all of them. Next-door neighbors, our families were always close. Growing up like siblings, she was my only confidant. But what if she felt differently about me? I looked at the album, reminiscing about distant memories. The next morning, I woke up with a slight headache from the unfamiliar wine and decided to organize the information I had gathered about going paperless. Jessica's company also had many older employees. How could we smoothly implement this change? I kept thinking of Michael's troubled expression. I feel like I'm not needed anymore. His words reflected the confusion over the rapid change. The handwritten methods, which had always worked fine, was suddenly being replaced with computers. It must have felt like something was being taken away from him. The key was to go gradually. I suggested to Jessica that we install a few tablets in the factory and let everyone freely use them. We would scan and store documents on these tablets. There was an enormous amount, and it was a tough job, but Jessica had told me, take your time. So I steadily and silently scanned all the documents. People could still find documents on paper, but they could also use the tablets. This way, no one would be left behind. Gradually, more people started using the tablets instead of sifting through piles of paper. Once no one needed the paper documents anymore, we could dispose of them. While I was busy with Jessica's factory's paperless transition, I got a call from Michael. Feeling a bit anxious, I answered. Michael? Hey, you recognize my voice, he said. I sniffed a little and said, caller ID, you know. Michael laughed. I can't see those little letters. Getting old is tough. I chuckled. How are you doing? I answered honestly. Sorry about before. The sudden change in the system made me feel left behind, and knowing you, who I cared for, had created it. I felt ashamed and stubborn. I shook my head. Even though Michael couldn't see it. Sudden changes are confusing. I'm sorry too. I told him how I was now implementing a paperless system at my childhood friend's company, taking it slow and using my past experience. Michael laughed and said, I wish you'd done that for us too. Apparently, he had gotten used to the system now. Once I tried it, it was well made. I'm impressed. Now I can finish the daily reports in no time. I was thrilled to hear that. The system I had created was still in use and helping Michael work more efficiently. When I retire, I'll go visit and we'll drink. My treat. I really am sorry. I had told everyone my reason for quitting was concern for my parents back home. I never mentioned Michael. But Michael must have felt guilty about my leaving. Yes. Let's definitely drink together. I'll be waiting. With that, we ended the call. A refreshing breeze seemed to flow through my heart. And so, a year had passed before I knew it. What started as a temporary employment contract from Jessica to help with the paperless system, expected to last about 3 months, turned into a full year. Eventually, I became a full-time employee at the factory. Having originally come from an engineering background, I was always interested in creating things. As I promoted a paperless environment, I became closer with my colleagues and naturally began calling Jessica Ms. Johnson without hesitation. The paperless transition was smooth, reducing printing costs and time, which we redirected into production, doubling our sales. With less paper clutter, the factory had more space, making it a cleaner and more comfortable place to work. I had returned to my hometown, become a full-time employee, and the company was thriving. One task remained. I stood in front of Jessica's house with a determined look. When I rang the bell, Jessica appeared at the door. What's up? Seeing the plastic bag hanging from my hand, Jessica smiled broadly and made a drinking gesture, asking, Want a drink? Yeah, is your room okay? She smiled and let me in. Jessica's room had changed a lot since the last time I saw it. She always liked to rearrange things. As her taste changes, the small items change too, making the room feel like someone else's every time I enter. What hasn't changed in the room is a small stuffed animal. You still have this? As I gave a wry smile, Jessica pouted. Of course. It's my favorite. It was a stuffed animal I had received from my parents for my birthday. Jessica had said it was cute, and as a boy trying to shed his cute image for a cool one, I gave it to her, saying I didn't want it. My mom looked a bit sad, but seeing Jessica cherish it made her happy. You've kept it well, hasn't changed at all. When I said that, Jessica peered into my face. There's one more thing that hasn't changed, can you guess? I looked straight at her. Yeah, your feelings for me. Jessica's eyes widened in surprise. What? She looked shocked, her eyes darting around. So cute. Sorry to keep you waiting. I finally realized my own feelings. I've always liked you too, Jessica. Jessica trembled. No way, but you went to New York without a care and got a job there, you didn't need me. I sighed. Really? I was insensitive to my own feelings. No, I think I was just comfortable. I believed that even if we were physically apart, our hearts were still connected. Jessica had made the effort to keep in touch regularly, and we always had long conversations. But it was all thanks to her efforts. I was just relying on her for everything. I've been thinking about you ever since I returned a year ago. I saw different sides of you when we built secret bases as kids. When we made crafts for the school festival, when we studied together in high school, and now as you run the factory. You've always been amazing. And I've always felt so comfortable being by your side. What I felt for Jessica had always been special, but I hadn't recognized it as such. A year ago, when she showed her feelings for me, it all clicked. I want to be with you forever, like it's the most natural thing in the world. So, forget about dating. Will you marry me? In contrast to a year ago, I was the one who hugged Jessica this time. In my arms, she said, yes. I'm so happy. I've always wanted to be with you. I want to have a grand wedding, inviting everyone from the factory. If Mr. Smith and my old colleagues, Michael, could be there, it would be perfect. Imagining everyone celebrating with us, their faces flushed from the drinks, I couldn't help but smile broadly.